Hi, I'm Sophia Anne Caruso, and you're watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I am so happy to be joined by Sophia Anne Caruso. How are you?
I'm doing so well today.
I'm so happy to hear it. I know it's been a bit of a busy schedule for you as we gear up for the release of your new project, season two of One Piece. But to start off, what can you share about your background in the arts and what sparked that passion in you to pursue this field as a career?
So, my background comes from theater. I started in theater and I got started in theater from, well, really watching movies growing up and wanting to be an actor and I would watch the PBS Arts channel and see the operas and the ballets and I just always wanted to do it as I looked at it and it was just a calling, since a very young age and so, I was put into theater and eventually moved to New York with my mom when I was 9 to pursue it. And, I started doing it and I kind of didn't stop. And then my career sort of branched out into TV and film and music and all of these other things, that kind of came with it. But I originally started in the theater. I'm a theater actor by trade. And, if people ask me, what I do, in my heart, I always say I'm a theater actor.
And you've talked about it before, like your move from Spokane, Washington on the West Coast, which I'm familiar with, being in Vancouver, also on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But your parents and your mom, you said they really gave you the opportunity to grow and succeed. So can you talk a bit about the support you've had from your family to get to the point where you are in your career today?
Yeah, I would not be me without my mom and my family and the, support and just them believing in me really. I don't come from the entertainment industry. I don't have any family that's in the arts. So it was all very new to them and to me when I started, and I sort of had to figure things out as I went, I had never done it before, and neither had my parents. So, uh, but their belief in me and their trust that I was capable of, achieving my dreams and that I had the talent to back it up, just believing in me, really, really I think is key. And, my mom had an antique store and stuff, and she gave that up to move to New York with me. So I owe her everything for doing that for me. Because I wouldn't have moved to New York if we had to stay and do that. So
I'm sure it means the world and getting to celebrate your successes with you. It's really a win for your family. And we'll talk a bit more about those other facets of the arts you're involved in. But let's start with that rich theater background. You've had notable roles in Lazarus, Beetlejuice, and Grey House, runs on Broadway. Tell me about this love for the stage that you have and performing live for audiences.
there's really nothing like it. I think it's somebody the other day described it as like Nirvana. Being able to sing on stage, it feels like Nirvana. It's this ultimate, just indescribable experience. It's very euphoric. Yeah, theater is my craft. At the end of the day, it is where I come from, and my love for the stage, I think, has a lot to do with being present. When you make a TV show or a movie, you show up to set, you do all these takes, and ultimately it's in the editor's hands to create the performance. And I think so much of a performance and a movie or a TV show is created, in the post-production, which actors really have no part in for the most part. Especially, on this, I haven't seen all the episodes. I haven't seen the completion of my own episodes for this show. So there's so much that I have no idea about, how what my performance will be. Um, but on stage, it's completely up to you to be in the present and complete that performance in one take. You have one chance in the moment, and I think that the being present and I love doing something from start to finish. When you're on set for a TV show or something, you're shooting, from the middle of the scene to the end from different angles, and there's a very like technical element to it. But being on stage, doing something from start to finish, having that complete journey all in one go, there's nothing like it. It's very different. Very different.
And like you mentioned, there's something special about being a part of something from start to finish and really getting to see it through your own eyes. Now, you continue to be a part of David Bowie's legacy after Lazarus. You still perform at celebration concerts for him and his music. What does it mean to be connected with his name, having met and collaborated with him, and knowing the impact he's left on music and pop culture?
Big question. It means everything to me. The the legacy, you know, David's work was so massive. There's so much there. Um, that experience means a lot to me because he gave me this little gold pin, and whenever it's a very difficult industry, and whenever I'm sort of feeling some struggle or feeling some frustration or some sadness, I look at that and I remember, that he chose me to do that. And it's this sort of, I think having that with me, having that knowledge and having felt chosen by such a person that I respect will always stick with me. I think it gave me this very solid confidence in myself and my abilities, because all along the way throughout your career, there will be people who tell you that you can't do it or that you're not good enough or you're not this or you're not that. But I sometimes look back at that experience and on those moments and I'm like, my end all be all like icon, chose me and believed in me and believed that I could do it. And it gives me a lot of, confidence in myself. But that legacy, the fans are just so awesome. I love fandom in general. Like I love fans. I do it for the fans a little bit, Like I love to see the fans of something happy. And I love to be a part of making that happen. So seeing, doing these concerts yearly and being able to get all of these fans together in a room who just loved David, it's so cathartic and it's so special because it's almost like a summoning of his energy and an honoring of it. So it's very important to me. It's also very mm, uh, spiritual, and it's something that I want to honor. It's not something that I usually speak lightly about. And it's not something that I take lightly, like anything that's associated with David. Sometimes I'll be asked to do, random concerts, or I've been asked to go sing some of his music privately at something, and I say no because it's too spiritual and there's too much honor for me, and I want to make sure that anytime I'm honoring him or doing something relating to that, that it feels aligned with, something that he would have really liked. Um, so yeah, it's very, very important to me.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I see little clips of, the annual concerts and the atmosphere just seems so electric. But like you mentioned, there's this spirituality almost as well. And being in the room with so many people to honor him. And you also have your own music, which is very cool. You have your passions for music and writing. And I know that they do intersect because many of your songs start with your poetry. So, what are you inspired by as a songwriter and artist? And can you take me through that process for you writing music?
Yes, writing music is a very spiritual practice to me. I like to think of singing as sort of like chanting. It is really like a summoning. Um, and yeah, music is a deeply spiritual thing. Again, it's not something that I take lightly. Acting, of course I take all of my crafts very seriously, but there's a playfulness to acting for me. Um, there's a sense of play that's very different from creating music to me. Uh, I take music very, very much to heart and very, very seriously what I'm writing. I'd say my process is, it definitely starts with some poetry or some feeling that I just feel like I have to like get out. or something that I sort of have to say. And I think that the times I'm most inclined to write music are when I'm feeling very curious. I like to explore like a feeling. Like I'll feel a new feeling, a new sensation, and I'm like very curious about getting to the bottom of it or getting to like the source of that feeling. And the way that I kind of work through that is to make music. So again, it's a very spiritual thing to me. Um, and yeah, it usually starts with like a poem or kind of a few words. And then sometimes it will start with a melody, or I'll be playing on the guitar and it all kind of comes together. It maybe depends who I'm writing with, if I'm alone or what the vibe is. But I make a lot of stuff that doesn't have any singing on it as well. So it really just depends. But yeah, it's very important to me as like yeah, in my heart, it's very important to me.
I think it makes sense that some would just be instrumental because, like you mentioned, you're kind of chasing this feeling. And you've mentioned being a perfectionist is the reason that music is kind of slowly trickling out on your own terms. But I think my favorite of your release songs is Thing Like That because it has like this kind of cool retro feel. And there's some lyrics in there that I really love. They built it high but left no room for you. They made it up, but they never dreamt enough because I feel like you can kind of sense that disillusion. You also have co-writers that you kind of collaborate with. So you mentioned playing guitar. How long have you played guitar and piano for?
So my first guitar I got when I was probably about 8 or 9. Um, and yeah, so I've been playing since then. I'm not a it's not my main instrument. I'd say like my voice is the instrument that I lead with. That's where I start, even like if I'm writing like a guitar part or there's like a part of a song and I want a certain instrument, like I'll hum it out loud like what I want it to be. So that's kind of, and I like to bring in people who are really great at their instrument and the way that I feel about my voice to kind of do those parts. But I do accompany myself and I do use them as writing tools. So I've been playing, for a long time. I play everything by ear. So I also play the piano and a little bit of bass. And kind of like I can pick up an instrument and like figure it out and figure out my way through it a little bit. Um, but I'd say my main instrument is, definitely my voice, and the other instruments are kind of these other tools of expression. But yeah, so I play everything by ear.
That is so talented. I love the use of the word tools though, because like you mentioned, it's almost like, they help the vessel, which is your voice. And how does making music and having that creative and artistic control ultimately fulfill you?
Artistic control. Well, being an actor, there isn't a lot of that, especially in TV and film. Like I was mentioned earlier, everything changes in the edit, and you never really know how something's going to look. It's kind of out of your control. So being an actor is very submissive, and with my music, that's also a part of why my music is slow to trickle out, is because it's something that I consider to be mine, and it's because it's so spiritual and sacred to me. It's not something that, I put out lightly, and I like to hold on to it because it's something really that is for me. And sharing that music with the world is also really special and cool. And there are songs that, thing like that, these songs, like, yeah, I think that the world will really like these, but ultimately, or relate to them in some way. But ultimately, the singing is for me, and my voice is, the gift that I was given naturally. And so, yeah, I take it seriously, and I like to protect it. I like to protect the piece around using my voice and what I do with it. And that is very important to me. It's part of why I haven't, found myself sort of pursuing a pop career, in the way that often these pop careers are very like manipulated by image and things like that. And I'm very against the idea of like commercial appeal and, insincerity and these things. So it's it is very important to me. Those things, the being sincere and being real and authentic, those are the things that are important to me. It's less about like the control, like having the control, and more just feeling like nobody's forcing me to do something, if that makes sense. But it's not the control that I'm after per se.
I love how you worded that, very like intentional, with what you put out there and what you make. And I like that you're doing this for yourself. Are you still working on a poetry book and or new music that you might be sharing with the public at some point? And if so, what can you share?
Yes, I am. I'm always writing poetry. I always have a poem going. Yeah, my book of poetry has taken some, different forms, and it's also one of those things that it's just so for me. I think that being an artist is has never been about the commercial appeal or like the or putting something out that way. It is like a compulsive need to express myself authentically. And so I do that in my poetry and in my music. And then when those things get released into the world, sometimes it feels like they're not mine anymore. And that sometimes it, troubles me, but or holds me back from putting things out that are ready to be put out, maybe. But yes, I am still working on it. I'm always creating. And I know that when that I'll know when it's time to put the book out, if I want to put the book out. Um, I wrote a play. Maybe the play gets, made someday. Who knows? It's really more, but I enjoy the creation process of something more than the putting out of it, if that makes sense. So, but I am going to put out hopefully an EP this year. I've been working on a small EP. It'll be maybe 5 or 6 songs, something like that. I have a couple different sort of like music projects that I'm working on that are, a little different. One is a little bit of a concept album. Um, and like they're all kind of like conceptual a little bit. But yeah, I am planning to put an EP out this year, and everyone's, nagging me to do it a little bit. And so when my friends and my family are sort of writing me about it, um, and nudging me, it helps get me to do it. I'm less inclined to put things out, as some people are. But I plan on putting out an EP this year.
If anything, do it for your friends and family. But I know
Yeah.
you've kind of been inspired by like pop, rock, jazz as well, which you grew up listening to, in your mom's shop. So is it along the same vein in terms of genre?
Yeah, this this EP I've been working on is sort of cinematic, actually. There's a lot of synths. It's very moody, and it's not super literal, and structure is not pop structure. It's very fluid, and the songs sort of tell their own story, but they're not, I wouldn't call them like, like pop bangers. It's not my like intention with the songs that I've been writing lately. Um, thing like that. That's totally has like such a pop feel to it, and I love that, and that stuff is super fun. I just really wanted to make something that felt like what naturally came out. So so yeah, it's definitely has like a more cinematic, moody feel. It's kind of like sad and sensual at the same time. Um, and yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from Brian Eno and a lot of these um, sort of electronic synthy and like very cinematic, musicians and producers. So yeah, there's a lot of that in there.
Well, I'm looking forward to its release when the time is right and when the time it comes. We will get into your current project now, which is season 2 of One Piece on Netflix. And I will note we are discussing heavy spoilers. So for all those watching, please make sure you have finished season 2 before continuing this interview. What can you share about your audition process and What drew you to wanting to be a part of this world?
So my audition for One Piece was so funny. I didn't know what the project was. It was, it's always the jobs that you don't expect to happen that happen. And I had been doing a bunch of auditions on this morning. I had like all these tapes I was making. I was like, oh, I have one more. I have one more to do. I was on the phone with my coach. I was like, yeah, I have one more. I'm not really sure what it is because it was under a code name. So I had no idea what it was. There was the character description was very strange. And the sides were not sides from the actual show. They kind of were, but they were modified to keep it confidential. So I kind of was like, I'm just gonna do a couple takes of this. I'm not gonna give it too much thought because I don't know what it is or what they want. I'm just gonna like throw a couple takes down. I did one take. I did one take of my scene, or it was two short scenes, I think. And I just did one take and I was like, yeah, that's good. We'll send that in. I sent it in and my manager called me, a week later and said that I was pinned. And I was like, pinned for what? What project is this? And next thing I knew, I was booked. So, and then when they told me what it was, I was like, oh my God, this is a huge show. This is so awesome. And my nephews are huge One Piece fans, like biggest One Piece fans ever. So I was really excited to, tell them about it and talk to them about it. But yeah, it was just a funny audition process because I didn't know what it was until I got it, and then the excitement, hit me all at once. Yeah.
Do you remember what anything said in like the slate or anything that you kind of a modified scene that you had to read, or was it all just you were kind of looking at it and saying this doesn't make much sense, but it's funny what it turns out to be?
Yeah, it was there's see this is coming out after the show is on so I can talk about it, but there's a part where I stab Luffy in the hand with a paintbrush. And I remember doing that in the scene and being like, what is this? Like why am I being like Uh, it was just very strange. I knew that it was something that the show was probably like fantasy or some kind of like otherworldly, not realistic thing, just based off of the tone and vibe of the side. So when I, read them, I was kind of like, this is definitely like a stylized type of acting. This is not like a supernatural film vibe. This is a little dramatic and a little more stylized. So I think that I immediately picked up on that even from the sides that they gave me that weren't the actual scenes. But there were little things in it like stabbing him with, whatever and the tea. I was the tea party scene. I did and yeah, so there was little things. I don't remember exactly what the scenes were, but I do remember that. I remember watching my tapes back recently, like I found my tapes for it, and I was like, well, I was so curious, like how I just sent in one tape, no callbacks, nothing, just got the job. I went back and watched them. I was like, oh, these aren't bad. Um, these really aren't bad tapes. They're really good. And I remember like the face that I made when I stabbed him in the hand. And now with the perspective I have of really knowing this character so well, I'm like, oh, I see. It wasn't even my intention to like make the Goldenweek face when I did that, but it's like exact. It's like exact, to what you see in like the manga and stuff. So it's kind of cool how it just naturally happened to be what the part was.
Yeah, I feel like they just wanted a gauge of your like mannerisms and expressions, and you gave it to them like you mentioned. It came out so naturally.
Yeah,
If you weren't
yeah.
already the cool aunt, you must be the coolest aunt to your nephews now.
Yeah, I definitely leveled up in coolness. I had my brother came to the premiere with me the other night, and I, made it my mission to make sure that I got all of our cast to sign these stuff for them. So I was like walking around having everybody sign it, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna be so cool. Like they're just gonna love this, and I get excited. Like the thought that like my nephews think it's cool and like my family thinks it's cool is really exciting to me. Like I said, I love the fandom for things like this. It is exciting on acting projects, seeing people, feel like their dream of something, their vision of something is like coming true. I totally understand that excitement. So it's really special to be able to, to do that. It's a gift. Um, yeah, but it was just a funny audition process.
Well, I'm so happy that you got the part. You're perfect in this role. Once you found out it was one for One Piece, can you expand on the research and preparation you did going into filming, and what specific elements did you draw from the source material to inform your performance as Miss Goldenweek?
Yeah, I really focused on the manga a lot. And looking at that, I also asked my nephews what their favorite parts about Miss Golden Week and the Baroque Works and all of this were because, there's maybe some things that I might not pick up on when I'm looking at the manga or the anime and they're just such huge fans that I wanted to ask them about that. So I wanted to I wanted to cater my performance to honoring the source material, the manga, and also trying to throw in a little bit of fan fan picks, fan ideas, and to make it my own and make it my own interpretation. When I've done stuff that's based off of books before, and based off of these like iconic characters like Lydia. So I think it is like important to me to make it my own and have my own interpretation instead of sort of like performing or replicating some other idea. Like that's the special thing about an actor, right? Is that they're bringing their own interpretation to it. So I wanted to bring myself to it as well. And I think I have a very dry and dark sense of humor. Like really, really dry, and I can be pretty deadpan. So there was some things about me that already sort of lined up with her. And so you see a little bits of me coming out in the character as well. And it's a hard character because she is very deadpan and she's very like straight faced, but that can get very one note very easily. And I wanted to make sure that there was like lots of dimension and lots of colors and you know, lots of subtext and little things going on under the surface so that it wasn't just nothingness, because that's ultimately not that interesting to watch. We might look at like a manga and see this kind of like deadpan vibe and it's cool there, but sometimes it doesn't always translate on camera. And so I wanted to try and like find the balance of deadpan and infusing just the right amount of emotion for her. Because ultimately she's kind of a little bit of a sociopath. And she doesn't like really feel emotion. That's why she manipulates other people's emotion is so that she can like watch them do it. And she's like interested in that. But I don't think that she's like she doesn't strike me as a like a deep feeler or you know what I mean? Like she's not as empathetic, you know. She's very dry, but there is always like a little like wink smirk under what I'm doing. So I'm very hopeful that the fans will be happy all around because I did pull inspiration from the anime and the manga and from talking to people who love the show. So I'm very hopeful.
Well, I thought you played it off super well. So that's coming from one fan. And, she has this intensity to her, and, she's agile and she's stealthy. I feel like it was very fitting because she paints and you paint. And, what's referenced throughout a lot of the dialogue is this note of toys and broken toys. And you also have a release song called Toys. So did you ever kind of think back and be like, this was a match made in heaven for you?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny how perfect the character is for me. And I mean I have red hair. You know what I mean? It's like red hair and brown eyes. Like I have every like I even look like the character. So it's and that like rarely happens for me, I'm always like wigged and I really like to transform when I'm playing characters, but it was just very um so similar to me like there wasn't too much I had to like change about myself. I think I was one of the only cast members that didn't wear a wig. Um yeah, so I think yeah, I was delighted and surprised when little things like toys or something like that would come up. I'd be like, that's kind of funny, But yeah, I mean those are always the jobs that end up happening are the ones that just like have all that really random alignment. Um, but yeah, I mean my song Toys is definitely a different a different kind of song. You know, I don't know that maybe she would like it. Maybe Miss Goldenweek would like that song. The broken, because she has her toys. Maybe actually I think she would. That would be on her playlist for sure.
I was gonna say like thematically and in tone, I think it like kind of would match, that kind of cursed persona that she takes on. But you mentioned the IP, like how memorable Baroque Works is. There's a lot of weight on portrayal and how distinct these characters are from one another. How did you find Miss Goldenweek's voice with the dialogue you were given?
Like my speaking voice that I use. Um, well, I listened to the anime and that kind of like monotone stuff and the way people described her. I think that, like I said, I'm pretty dry and sometimes I can sound a little monotone even when I'm excited. So it was very close to my voice. I definitely added a kind of teasing and youthful inflection. I would say there's like a layer to the voice that is has this like false kind of sweetness, kind of. Because I don't think that she's like sincere. I think that she's aggressive, but like her whole front of being naive and young and I'm a little girl and I have my toys and my teacups. It's fake. I don't think that she's not actually young. In the manga, she's not a child. She dresses like a child and she acts like a child. So she's kind of like petulant. There's like sometimes there were some reads that I did that were very like pouty and kind of like not whiny, but petulant and almost throwing a fake tantrum. So I think she kind of like leans into being like young or uses that as like a cover. And I suppose I could relate to that. I'm small in stature and people often underestimate me just because I look really young and I'm very petite. So I suppose I can relate to that. It can definitely be used to one's advantage if you do it right. So I think that I even added a little layer of that to it.
I love that. And I think she's supposed to be like a teenager, some kind of teenage age. I feel like, her tone also switches between like apathetic and threatening. And as you mentioned, there's like that kind of teasing part to her as well. Let's talk about style and creating her look with your hair, makeup, and wardrobe departments. Did you have any ideas going in, and how was it to recreate that signature look from the manga and anime? Like, how did her attire really complement her personality and who Miss Goldenweek is?
Yes, I mean, to me it was very obvious what her costuming was going to be, the classic Miss Goldenwick look that we first meet her in on the show. So when I had my first fitting, I'm very open-minded when it comes to costuming, and I really like to see what a costume designer like brings to the table and like all of their ideas, and I like to work with those, and it often inspires me when I have a great costume designer who's bringing me, cool little things. It ends up really inspiring the performance a great deal when you have a costume that's already built. Um, so when I walked into my fitting, I looked at everything and I was like, wow, this is perfect. I remember I had a lot of shoe options. We had a lot of different sneakers for me to try on. And some of them were a little more flat, some of them were more pointy. And then there was these ones like at the end that were just huge. These huge, dumb sneakers that just looked like something a toddler would wear. And I was like, it has to be those. Like, I have to have these big, dumb toddler sneakers. Because when you look at the manga, like the angles too, it always makes her feet look oddly large. And I was like, maybe nobody will notice this, but I have always noticed like how her shoes take up so much space. And so I really wanted these clunky, stupid shoes. And it ended up being like one of my favorite little things was her toddler shoes. And we tried with the makeup. we had a couple different tests and we tried freckles at one point, and I felt that it was too Pippi Longstocking-ish and that she didn't really have freckles in any of the source material, and it felt a little like kitschy and it maybe wasn't the thing. So I didn't want to do the freckles, but we did do the classic blush that she has. And that was actually my blush that I brought from home. I brought it from the States. And I was like, I think this is going to be the blush that we have to use because I knew how it like looked on my face. And the ends of my hair in the pigtails, I wanted them to look like paintbrushes. So like the tips of my pigtails are shaped like the end of a paintbrush, and in the little pigtail bits, there's bits of metal wrapped around the puff braid. And that reminded me a lot of a paintbrush, the tip of a paintbrush, how there's like the metal and then the sort of, fluffy tip. So I wanted that to look like a nod to paintbrushes kind of. And what else? Yeah, it's all I think all of it, I just wanted to have like very subtle hidden things. I didn't want anything to be distracting, but the shoes and the pigtails was like very important to me. Yeah.
I think it's so cool how you mention all of these being so subtle, but they really also help you embody this character because when you have it on, you're kind of like, okay, I'm feeling good, and this is really what helps represent who she is. Now, naturally, when you play a character, there's thought given to one's past and how it affects someone in present day. And Miss Goldenweek's past is loosely touched upon in her conversation with Luffy. Did you consider what may have led her to joining Baroque Works and what the organization provides her with?
I kind of created my own little backstory for myself. The source material is so dense. So I did as much research as I could, but I felt like that I like that there is some mystery as to how Marianne ended up being Miss Golden Week. I like that there is like some mystery as to how she kind of got there. I have this line about putting my parents in a box. Um, you know, and so one has to wonder why she put her parents in a box and tortured them. But I think that, like I said, there's always this little like kind of smirk under what I am saying, and I like that mischief. I like that mystery. So to make it like almost too obvious to myself, I felt like would make it too obvious to the audience, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I liked the mystery a little bit of how she got there, but I think that she is kind of like a runaway, and she's kind of like a runaway type who, hides behind this very manipulative, tough mask. But maybe under all of it, Marianne is just, maybe she also just wants to belong. Who knows?
And I think being part of Baroque Works, like it gives you a bit of, a purpose as well. And she often talks about being lonely. What can you say about the dynamics of her partnership with Mr. Three and how they work together?
Yeah, Mr. Three and Miss Golden Week have this, I suppose, a similar dynamic to David and I. There's like a camaraderie, there's kind of like a uh an understanding and like an equalness. Like, I love working with David. He is amazing. Perfect Mr. Three. I mean, so awesome. And he, I think that there was like, there was some moments, like some takes we did, and David was kind of like, acted almost like spooked by me a little bit. And I loved that. I loved that. I loved that they have a power dynamic. I think actually, technically in ranking, and I'm sure a fan can correct me on this if they need to, but I think that in the ranking of Baroque works, Miss Golden Week is more dangerous than Mr. Three. So I liked that David had a little bit of a like, okay, or I pull out the paintbrush and I'm like, oh, maybe you should be my toy. And he's like, okay, please don't torture me, you know? So I like that there's that kind of power dynamic, push and pull, like danger to them. But she also like is kind of petulant and like asking him for permission. Well, can I keep him? Can I keep this toy? And like I was saying earlier, I don't know that that's fully sincerely asking. I think she's putting on this like front, well, can I keep the toy? But she's gonna keep him either way. She's gonna do what she wants. So I think it's this kind of playful power dynamic that they have together. But ultimately they work together and they're business partners. But I've always thought of Miss Goldenweek less as his assistant and more as his like mm, sibling. They're almost like siblings to me. Yeah.
I love that. And, because they have such a big size difference, it's easy to kind of misconstrue or misunderstand like her role in their partnership. But like you mentioned, he does kind of take that step back in their conversation, and she uses her colors trap to hypnotize and manipulate targets. Tell me about this ability for her and what you thought of the psychological approach the character takes.
I love it. It's totally, aligned with the types of parts I play and enjoy playing. I like these scenes that have a lot of subtext in sort of like manipulation, psychological manipulation. It was really funny and perfect because I'm also a painter. So when we were in pre-production, I helped design the little thing. I was before I even got to Cape Town, I was like sending them pictures of like how I was thinking to draw it and stuff. Um, yeah, I think those scenes are always very fun. The psychological manipulation scenes and being able to toy with somebody and have the power in a scene. And she's so good at it, right? Because she doesn't have any kind of, she's very even. She's very even. There's not like a lot of, exploding until later, but her voice and her demeanor stays very even in these sort of intense situations. And I always think that, the person that holds power in a conversation or in the room usually is the quiet one. It's not the person who's being loud and like or yelling. When you're in an argument with somebody and they start yelling, they immediately lose their cool and they lose their power. So I think that her very even sort of that deadpan thing gives her so much power unexpectedly, especially for her stature and very goofy appearance. Yeah.
She definitely has like that emotional regulation, like you mentioned, at least for the majority of it before it starts unraveling later on. But you mentioned David, so sharing that early scene opposite David Dastmalchian as your characters discuss their plan, how was it working with him, a veteran actor, and getting to build a bit of a history between the agents through their dialogue?
Well, David and I met, it seems like a couple days maybe before we were shooting. We didn't have a lot of like, lead up time. We didn't do a lot of scheming about it. It really came about naturally for us. I think that our natural dynamic really just read on screen well. David is such an incredible, like you said, he's a veteran and he goes all over the board with his acting. He does, very serious dramas, comedies, One Piece, he's all over the fantasy spectrum. So he's really an admirable actor. I loved working with him. And I think it really just came natural to us, the dynamic between the two of them. I think it was kind of like unspoken and we didn't, pre-plan and scheme everything. It just really came naturally to us. And yeah, it was just very natural for us, the dynamic.
Did you do any read-throughs at all, or you kind of just went into the scene and, performed what we get to see in the final cut?
We just went right in and we didn't have any read-throughs. I mean, maybe we ran it in the trailer once or something like that, but I don't we didn't have any, read-throughs of those scenes. We just kind of got to set and looked at our surroundings, like, okay, like, let's go here and maybe go there and we didn't talk too much about it. We kind of just did it. And that's awesome to me. I really like that way of going about it. Very like instinctual and intentional without overthinking or over planning. Going into the scene knowing what you want to, having an idea of what you want to do with it, but being sort of like flexible and malleable to whatever happens on the set or wherever a different scene partner takes you. Because if you go into kind of like rehearsed or solid, then you miss out on the fun of what happens in the moment, that kind of those spontaneous ideas that come up. And there were lots of those.
I think it's very fitting because these characters don't like come together to hash out their plans together. So it really makes sense that, they're kind of like on their own path and on their own timeline, and then they come together and have these interactions. And you shared very powerful scenes opposite Iñaki Godoy as Luffy during Miss Goldenweek's picnic. How was that sequence to film, and how did Iñaki's performance shape your own?
Love Iñaki Kiki. It's just wonderful. He is just like his character. He is so charismatic and so delightful to be on set with, and also so professional and really and so well put together, and just really really a joy to work with him. The scene, uh, the final sort of big pinnacle scene with him and I. Um, that was my last day of shooting. So we shot that on my last day of shooting, and it was very windy. It was very, very windy, and there was sound stuff, and we had a lot of coverage to get. Um, he he was very go with the flow too. I think we kind of did it, and I just naturally reacted to what he did as it came up. Nothing, there wasn't anything like too out of the blue with what he was doing that like, completely changed the course of the scene or how I had kind of imagined it or thought of it. But he's definitely very alive and he, you know, will shoot something and then he can just come right back to just talking and being himself between takes, which I thought was, very cool. I like that. I like that kind of being able to not take it too seriously in a way. I mean, obviously we're taking this seriously, but to be able to just have that playfulness on set and not have things feel rigid, I think creates an environment where people are comfortable, they feel like they can naturally react to things and they don't feel like stiff and rigid. Because when two actors can like kind of come together with that playfulness, you get so much more fun stuff. But when one or the other is like rigid or less collaborative, less playful, it can sometimes feel like you're in your own scene. But Kiki was not at all like that. He was so so warm and so fun, and it all kind of came natural to us.
I thought you had the perfect like level of psychotic towards the end there. And Miss Golden Week, she's bothered by Luffy's insistence he save his friends and achieve his dreams, and she shares that her curse is being lonely. Can you expand on how those feelings have manifested for her and affected her mentality in that she decided now was the time for Luffy to die by her hands, instead of bringing him back to Mr. Three as initially discussed?
Yeah, I think that the way that I thought of it while we were shooting truly is that she is sort of a sociopath. And a sociopath doesn't necessarily experience emotion. So, one could argue that she doesn't like Luffy and his confidence that he's going to be king of the pirates and have all these friends because she's jealous that he has friends. One could say something like that, but the way that I didn't really think of it that way, the way I approached it was more like she's a sociopath. This emotion that he has kind of confuses her and is curious. She's curious about it, so she's going to toy with it. She's going to play with it and she's going to, flip it upside down and like experiment with his emotions so that she can like experience something, if that makes sense. Um, so and that's what I also mean with the petulant thing and the, not sincerity in terms of like being like sweet, or she's always kind of like putting on a little bit of like a performance, a little bit of a front. So that mystery of not knowing exactly why she's doing what she's doing. And in the manga and later on, she's not as evil. She doesn't seem as evil. And all these great things happen, and that would be so cool to experiment with as well. But the way that I thought about it in terms of shooting this season was that kind of like sociopathic like manipulation, but not because of like something that she feels so much as something she doesn't feel.
Yeah, and she calls it fun. So this is
Yeah,
all like fun and games to her.
it's a
And
teenager.
I
Yeah.
really don't think she's scared of Mr. Three. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if she goes back and says, "Well, I had to deal with Luffy myself," like she doesn't really, she doesn't think anything is going to come back at her.
I don't think she's scared of anyone, right? She has Luffy, who is this powerful and seemingly invincible, boy made of rubber. And she's not scared of him. He has a big bounty out on him, but she's not scared of him. She thinks it's fun. I don't think she like thinks that there's like a consequence for her until the paint palette hits her face and she's like, yeah.
Let's talk about that paint palette. Her plan backfires. Usopp kicks it up, which colors her face in her own special paint. And it's later revealed by Miss Valentine that Miss Goldenweek has lost her mind. What was your reaction when you read of her ultimate demise? And in your opinion, is her situation more complicated than just rubbing the paint off to break the madness?
Ooh, that's an awesome question. I think when I read it, I thought it was so funny. I was like, of course, she's gonna be kind of deadpan and not emotional this whole time. And then, she meets her demise a little bit. It comes back to bite her and she experiences it and it's this, crazy moment. What's interesting is I only had one take to shoot that. So we were at the end of our shoot day and it was the final part of the scene. And we're like, all right, let's go. And I just did one take and that was that. So that it was funny because I was really excited to shoot that moment and had all these different ideas and stuff, but it ended up being a very quick moment that we shot. But yeah, I'm curious to see, what happens with Miss Golden Week after this paint splatter could go any direction. I mean, maybe she experiences all of these feelings and she's like, wow, I've really been pretty mean. I've been pretty awful. And, maybe she grows empathy by experiencing these emotions that she hasn't before. Who knows? Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens to Miss Golden Week.
As you mentioned, like she does return, she does appear in the manga and anime's Water 7 arc. So there have been some creative differences from the source material and the show. I'm guessing that you would be happy to return to continue her story if asked.
Oh my God, I would love to. I had so much fun making this. I had so much fun with the cast. It really was like we were on our own ship. Like we were on our own ship on our own crew and like all of us really like vibed. So I would absolutely go back in and do that if they asked. I think that would be so much fun. So much fun.
How exactly was that scene filmed with the palette hitting her face? So, like, what was kind of kicked up? And I'm guessing that you kind of had the colors already on there.
Yeah, if I'm remembering right, there might have been some kind of like contraption. Yes, there was some kind of contraption to get this shot of it like flying through the air that I think they did some kind of, if I'm remembering right, some kind of like slingshotty type of thing that sent it flying, but not at me or maybe somebody kicked it or something and they shot that, but not at me because we don't want to, hurt my face, obviously. So we shot that and then we shot a close up of the paint palette hitting my face. And that was basically, somebody from stunts like holding the thing up and like gently like tossing it at my face. And I think we painted we might have like painted it before and then had it come. I can't remember exactly. That was also at the end of the day. So it was like we were moving very quickly. It's a little bit hard to remember exactly how it happened. But I do remember there being like a close up and then like tossing it in my face, and then it like, they wanted it to like slide down my face kind of, and like have this see this crazy reaction. So we did like a couple different versions of that, and that's how that was made.
Well, it looks great, and it was really funny to see Usopp or Jacob dodge you and call you creepy long stalking. I thought that was art was so funny. What do you remember from filming at the Little Garden and Candelabra sets, and what stood out to you being transported to these new places? I know that practical sets and design was something very important.
Yeah, oh, I love Jacob. I think he's just so funny. He's delightful. He's a delightful person. And when he said that line, I was wondering how he was going to say it. It's like a hard line, because it's kind of like campy and like funny. And so I was very curious how he would do it, and he just owned it. I loved it. He's great. The sets were so intricate. So much care went into making the sets. I remember when I first got to Cape Town, like my first fitting was at the studio, and they took me on just a tour of the sets. And these are sets that I wasn't even going to be performing on. They just wanted to show me, and the ships, like the care that was going into like building these and making these so intricate and special was just like totally blew my mind. It was just awesome. And I remember cake set, the cake set with the Mr. Three's cake, his cake. The first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, I didn't know that it was gonna be that big. It's huge. It's so huge. And I remember like taking a sneaky picture and showing it to my mom over FaceTime, and her being like, oh my God, it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. A lot of detail.
And I love when Miss Goldenweek asks, like, again, deadpan, is it my birthday? But the sets look so fantastic. Do you have a favorite behind the scenes memory that you can share from set? You know, it could be on and off set, working with the cast and crew and creative team.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Honestly, every moment I had just so much fun. On Halloween, I was shooting on Halloween the day. Yeah, I guess it had been that day. And Kiki Iñaki came to set wearing like a Spider-Man or Batman. It was Batman that he was. He was Batman. And full costume. And I'm not particularly a morning person, but I just thought it was so funny. I was like, it's stupid o'clock. It's like 6 in the morning. And Kiki he's so vibrant. He has so much energy. It was like inspiring. He really like he keeps the energy up. But I loved shooting that day because it was goofy. It's goofy to like be on set, on Halloween. It's kind of fun. We also played a lot of games. Like we had game nights with the cast, and we are all kind of staying together. So um those kind of offset hangouts were really fun too. But yeah, Kiki is just delightful.
And I know you posted, or some other co-stars posted, you went to the arcade. So you got to hang out with some castmates who you didn't even share scenes with, including like Julia, for example. So it must have been nice to kind of get to know one another.
Totally. And I was friendly with some of the cast before I knew that I was even going to be on the show. I knew who Julia was, and had shared mutuals with Cameras and Rob. So as it's the New York actor community is small, and so I was excited to spend time with them in New York. We all hang out too. We go to the arcade, we go out and have dinner sometimes, and yeah, they are meaningful friendships that I made that I think will last and continue to be special, because it's not always like that on a project. You'll be friends with really close with people while you're shooting, and then everyone goes off to do their next project and people lose touch. But we've definitely stayed in touch and and stayed close. So yeah.
And you got to reunite with some of them at the LA premiere event on Thursday. So can you just touch on that briefly? I know you mentioned, joining the fandom and how much love is there. So you got to experience that firsthand, and how much of this have you recognized pre-release, even on social media?
It was so great to celebrate with the cast. I've been looking forward to, doing this since we shot it, which, for me, that was like a year and a half ago or something. So it's been a long time coming. It was a big night. I was so excited and it totally lived up to my expectations. I had so much fun. And we all looked at, there's a really great picture with me and Cameras and Jacob and Sharithra, and we're all wearing kind of like red and gray, and we all look so cool together. And yeah, it was just such a fun night. We all just like looked great. We're having fun, celebrating. And actually, my premiere look, I was so excited about because I wanted to. This is a good example, I guess, of like how I care about the fandom and I like want the fans to be excited. My premiere look is like has little hidden nods in it. So when I was picking my premiere dress, I had like a very difficult task. I was like, I want to nod to the pinstripes because Mr. 3 has some pinstripes. So I want there to be some element of pinstripes. I want there to be some like um kind of steampunk Baroque Works vibe element to it. Something that almost has like a Tim Burton feel to it. A little steampunk, but not too much, you know? And I wanted my hair to be anime inspired. And so like these little things and it's exactly, how it came out with the buttons on the dress with the pinstripes and the hair that I didn't have these like little spikes, this like braid bun with these like long braids that came down and these little kind of like anime bangs. So I was like so excited. I was like, I really hope that the fans, like anime fans, like this hair and like this vibe. Because I wanted to be like, yeah, doing a nod to the show and the culture and the fans. So I was super excited about, my premiere outfit.
I feel like the thought and care is unmatched. So I'm so happy that you got to have that moment and get to meet some fans in person as well. How was that?
Oh, it was so great. I loved it. I was so happy to like sign stuff and meet people and take pictures and just, get to meet some of the fans in person. It was pretty cool.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait for everyone to see your work in season 2 of One Piece. I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Oh, any ice cream flavor? Oh. I think maybe I would be pistachio. I think I'd be pistachio. It's a good color. It's my favorite. And also maybe it's not for everybody, but the people who love pistachio really love pistachio. And yeah, it's like nutty.
I love that answer. It's such a nice way to end things off. Thank you so much, Sophia, for taking the time to chat about your work and your music and writing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Of course, hopefully we can catch up again in the future, but until then, for all those watching, make sure to catch Sophia Anne Caruso as Miss Goldenweek in season 2 of One Piece, which is out now on Netflix. New EP coming hopefully later this year, so stay tuned and we will see you next time.